Hi there. So, if you want to survive in the business of making video games, the most important thing is that you finish your game. Now, that might seem like a rather basic thing to say, and in many ways it really is, but it's a lot harder than it seems. Fundamentally, video games are an art. Don't get me wrong. I know in this channel we often talk about business and survival and things like that, and that's the reason behind that is because A, we're trying to do something a bit unique, and B, because it's something that's so fundamental that not that many people I feel talk about. Like, there's a lot of channels on YouTube right now, and courses on Udemy and things like that about good video game design. And yeah, it's a beautiful art. If you're very good at it, then there's a good chance you'll sell games. However, survival is not always assured because there's a lot that can go against you. The algorithm can go against you. Just bad marketing might go against you. Just bad luck as well. A game very similar to yours might come out same day as you. It looks like you copied each other, and the people who could have potentially bought your game and somebody else's game, the crowd gets split in half. So a lot can go wrong. And that's just the unfortunate nature of it all. It's very similar in a lot of other creative fields, like YouTube and even TV shows and films. The amount of times that like two very similar films have come out at the same time. But again, there's different channels that talk about that. But the thing I'd like to talk about is finishing games, because I think for every game that's published, there's got to be quite a few out there that don't get finished. Now, there's no science on this because nobody's going to really admit to saying, oh yes, I worked on this game for so long and it's sitting in my hard drive and it's just not ever going to come out. Like, some people might mention it on forums, but there's no real way that we can get our hands on that sort of data. That being said, when you do go on forums and you ask for people's advice and you see their posts and then you see that it dwindles and they never announce their game coming out, you do get a picture of what's probably happened. Same when you look at sales for game engines and game assets, but then you don't really see as many games being made or published using those assets or that engine. So it does make you think, there's got to be a lot of people who haven't finished. And this is true for a lot of different arts as well. I know I keep saying, I guess because I do have that past in the music industry, but I've seen so many people who have albums that don't get finished, even songs that don't get finished. And whilst I understand from an artistic perspective that it's tempting to just say, oh, it's not perfect yet, I shouldn't release. This is sort of the mentality that can kill the business. Or better said, this is the mentality that separates the professionals from the amateurs. And yes, some amateurs might make something better than the professionals. We see that all the time in all sorts of things. This is why home cooking can sometimes taste a lot better than stuff you eat at the restaurant. But like, to be in business, you do have to shift how you're thinking. And so on the subject of like finishing games, I sort of want to discuss some of the dangers that one can fall into. I was mentioning in another video, but I think that video felt a bit scattered, so I'd like to focus just on the concept of finishing a game. I'm in the midst of finishing a game right now, so actually a lot of these thoughts have been coursing through my head right now, and I kind of decided to take a break from making this game just to make this video. One of the classic examples is feature creep. I've mentioned it in other videos before, and I keep mentioning it again because it can be really deadly for a game. Because you're going to be there, and midway through project, you think of a cool new feature you want to add to the game, and you think it's going to make it a lot better. It might, but given that if you're watching this, chances are you're either a solo dev or a small indie team. The percentage of people who are going to see a feature that you put in a little bit later in a game is not going to be super high. First of all, there's only a certain percentage of people who play the games they buy, especially if it's not AAA. So there's that to contend. Then there's an even smaller amount who even finish the game. So unless this new feature appears straight away and is a selling point, you know, really think twice before putting it in. Because if it's going to add a week or 2 weeks worth of work, and you're doing this full time, like you don't have another job or something else, that's something you have to think about. Like, is that something that is really going to add that much to the long-term value of the game, to the value of your portfolio? Is it a feature that is so cool that it's going to make somebody say, oh, I'm going to buy the other games in this studio's portfolio? So that's one of those things you have to be really careful about, and it's really worth thinking about before you put it in, because once you put it in, it's very hard to take out, and it can affect the morale of your team, especially if it's very hard to put in. So it's a real consideration. Like, these decisions go a long way. The other thing is the introduction of bugs, because again, if you're adding a feature this late in the game, or something that affects everything systemically, there's a chance that it can mess with everything else. And if it's a bug that's so bad that it takes you half a week to fix, which I know sounds mad, but these types of bugs definitely exist, that's another thing you have to take into consideration towards the budget of your game. Because end of the day, you're either paying yourself a salary or you're paying a team a salary, and every day that it's not out to market is a day that it's not making money. Now, I know that might seem like a fallacious way of thinking, but when you bear in mind the business of it all and the fact that you need to get other games out to market, then yes, it definitely is the point. Like, yes, you might think, yeah, it comes out in 3 days, but then it'll just make money in 3 days. That's all well and good. But let's say you've got 10 projects in a year, and then each of those projects gets delayed 3 days, bam, that's a month. That's a month that you've lost out on. So, Now, I know that sounds a bit mad. Like, you're all thinking, what? 10 projects in a year? But if you're a publishing studio like we are, and you've got various teams running, then yeah, that's reality. Now, we've never done 10 games in a year. I'm just kind of saying it for good math. But yeah, it's a consideration. The other thing that I think is really important towards getting games produced efficiently is pre-production. So it might seem very strange and like you're wasting your time to spend a lot of time on pre-production. That's where you're picking the primary game loop, the chief design, the story, the music, the entire thematic vision. Now, I do believe in organic design as well. I do believe some things emerge whilst you're designing. I actually think it's inevitable. But that's why good planning must be there, so that when something truly fantastic comes up, hopefully you can implement it simply without introducing new bugs. So pre-production is just so important. And whilst it might feel wasteful to spend north of a week on it, the decisions you make there can impact the rest of the project and can slice out, I'm not going to say months, but certainly weeks of bad decisions. The other thing I want to add towards finishing games, and a tip that really helps, is try not to work too much when you're tired. Now, this is a bit of a counterintuitive one, because we've got like this culture that says you need to power through, you need to do the hustle. But I found that sometimes when you're working, when either you've got really bad writer's block or you're just inherently tired, it's not very good for you, because especially in coding, you can make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes you can just implement bad ideas just because you're tired and you force the issue. If you've found that you've hit the wall, what I really recommend is, step away, go to the gym, take a walk, play a different game, watch a film, like do something else. It might feel like you're wasting your time, but a bad decision will waste your time more. Try to work when you're freshest all the time, and try to work in inspiration and get lots in when you're inspired or you've got a lot of ideas. Because working tired might really cause a lot of mistakes or just bad design, which will hamper you or just lead to bad reviews. It's just, I don't think it works that well in this context. Now, yes, AAA studios do it, but I mean, I feel AAA is a slightly different experience. I feel AAA games are more of a carefully committee like driven product rather than an art. There's still a lot of fun, there's still a lot of great moments in AAA games, don't get me wrong, they're excellent, but that's from a lot of people working at technical aspects that one wonders whether those make a difference. Like one of the famous examples is like the horses that poo in Red Dead Redemption. Does that really make a difference? Whereas smaller, tighter games, like let's say, by an auteur like let's say Lucas Pope, Return of the Obra Dinn, every single element he's put in, I felt was worth it. And I recommend this for your design as well. Put in what needs to be there, but really think twice about any fluff. Because at the end of the day, you're not really going to compete with a AAA studio. So you might as well make sure that your design is as tight as possible, doesn't have any fluff, and just delivers on what it needs to be. And then that way you can get onto your next exciting game or design straight away. So that's it. I hope that was useful for you, and see you in the next video. Cheers.